I was recently asked by a customer, how do we approach versioning an API at Zuplo? What do we do in Zuplo to go between, say, version 1 and version 2? How do we manage that? We use Zuplo internally for all of our APIs, even the one that sits behind portal.zuplo.com is an API that's managed by Zuplo. So we have quite a bit of experience with this. And so I'm going to take you through here a little demonstration showing you exactly how we do it. I'm going to focus here on URL versioning. We have been unambiguous in saying we think that's the best way to version an API. I'm actually working on a versioning masterclass, so stay tuned, subscribe on YouTube if you want to watch that. It'll also be a blog post. But here I'm going to show you how we approach that, how we manage that in Zuplo using multiple OpenAPI files. So here, let's go and create a project quickly called versioning demo. I'll take a few seconds to come live. One of the cool things about Zuplo is it's natively powered by OpenAPI. That means that this file here, the routes.oas.json, is an OpenAPI file, as simple as you can see here. So let's change this name here to be my API. And my recommendation here is you put the version of the API in the title, or at least in the description. And the title's handy, as I'll show you where that shows up in our developer portal in a minute. Another cool thing, you can actually rename this file. As long as it ends in .oas.json, then you're good. So I'm going to call this routes v1.oas.json. And whilst that's happening here, let's go in and add a route. We're going to do our usual trick here of just building a simple to-dos app /v1/todos. And we will do a URL rewrite, and we'll use JSON placeholder, this little to-dos API, as our backend. Let's save that. That'll deploy in about 5 seconds or so, as we'll see down here. And then we'll go and take a look at our developer portal. So here is version 1 of our API. It says my API v1, lovely. Get all to-dos, there it is. Let's test it, let's see if that's working. And great, there's our to-do items coming through. Now let's imagine we are going to make a breaking change to this API. We're going to remove the user ID. Now that would be a breaking change. It's a pretty silly change to make in this case, but maybe we're going to change it to be a user instead. But just for now, we're going to say we're going to remove the user ID. So what I'm going to do here is actually add a new OpenAPI document, because that's a breaking change. We're going to make a breaking change here. And so I'm going to have a routes v2.oas.json. Now I could copy the section from that API, but I'm just going to manually recreate it very quickly. Get all to-dos /v2/todos. And then I'm going to pop in here actually and change this and be called my API v2. And maybe you change this to be 2.0 as well. So let's save that. And that's now a new major version. Oh, I did something wrong. Let's see. What did I do wrong? Oh, I have duplicate routes declared. Of course I do, because I didn't change this to be v2. So I need to change the prefix there. So let's save that. A nice helpful build error there, obviously. That will deploy in a few seconds. And then, yeah, we're good to go. So now we have two APIs. I haven't actually gone ahead and made the breaking change. Maybe that happened in the back end. So let's just go and copy the handler for this actually. Come over here, do a URL rewrite, paste that in, hit save and deploy that. And whilst that's deploying, let's go and take a look at the developer portal. So here it is. And now we have two OpenAPI documents. And one of the cool things about Zuplo is for each OpenAPI document, we generate a separate developer portal for you. See here, you can see the different versions. So now your user can just switch between those and see my API v2. Now, that's basically how we do versioning. We have different versions on different OpenAPI docs for major version changes. You can actually use Zuplo as a very powerful tool in your arsenal for versioning. So let's say that we've just decided that we want to make this change, but we don't want to change the backend. Well, you can actually make the API behave differently in Zuplo itself. So what we're going to do is add a new outbound policy actually called remove user ID. And I don't need any options for this. So I can make that a type never. And what it's going to do is take the body here, const body, let's say, let's get the JSON actually out of it, equals response.json. We're going to assume it's JSON. You'd have some more safety checks in here and error checking, of course, just in case. Check the response is actually a 200. Actually, let's do that. Let's not be lazy. If response.status, let's assume we expect a 200 here. And if we don't have a 200, we're not going to try and modify anything. We're just going to return the response as is. But if we got a 200, everything is good. I'm expecting JSON, so I'm feeling pretty good. And now what we're going to do is go through that JSON and go through the items. So we'll say JSON.for each item. Delete item.userID. I think that's all I need to do. Let's try that. So then I would return new response, and the body is going to be JSON.stringify JSON. And I can init the response with the original response. Let's save that and then go and plug this in here on the outbound custom code policy. And the module is remove user ID. Click OK, save that. Now let's go and test it. So we're on version 2 here. If I come in here and hit test, if that worked well, yep, we've removed the user ID. So notice I've got 2 versions of my API actually using the same backend, but one is hitting v1, which has a user ID, and one is representing v2, which no longer has a user ID. The other change you should make here, but I don't have this, and I'll leave this as an exercise for the reader, is you probably should have schemas for your response types in your routes.json file, in your OpenAPI file here. You'd obviously want to modify the schema to say this one doesn't have a user ID, whereas the other one does. But that's how easy it is to think about versioning, especially URL-based versioning, when you're using Zuplo, and what a powerful tool it can be to help you affect some versioning changes and abstract the API underlying it without actually making a change to the underlying API. Enjoy.